G'day, frothers. You know those around us who operate at high energy levels? From friends, family, through to the famous. Those who emanate enthusiasm. They inspire you to be better. Their words give you a rush. This rush fires off dopamine right in the middle of your brain's reward centre. My theory is that at times, just before we need to hit our straps, to tap into peak performance in our flow state, we find these people and harness their energy. I call this energy froth. I call these people frothers. This is a journey to find the frothers, to understand how they inspire themselves and others to be their best. And I'll pass it on to you on this podcast, dare I say frothcast, so you can fly into your next challenge, beaming, pumped, and full of energy. This is a coffee shop with a Red Bull chaser. This is Finding the Frothers.
Benny Wallington here, and welcome to the first episode of Finding the Frothers. So pumped. It's been a bit of a journey, but we are ready to roll. And I was so whipped up upon listening back to this one. That is one of the best things about having a podcast, is that I can tap into the froth of these previous conversations, and I can't wait to bring this one to you. But straight to the point, Brett is a former professional athlete, has worked with some of the best sportsmen and women around the world at the highest level as a sprints and jumps coach and soft tissue therapist. While he froths in all aspects of his daily life, he's the host of internationally renowned podcast, Your Life of Impact, and is driven by passion, understands the role that adversity can play in success, and is truly inspired by peak human performance and our individual potential on this planet. His access to froth is an ever-growing evolution, but he takes us through some of his most powerful routines to fire himself up and those around him. I'm a sucker for narrative and words, and the words that Brett uses are a true expression of a genuine human being who thrives on abundance. There's a few Brett Robbo-isms in there for you. So let's get into it. I'll give you an absolute turbo frother, Brett Robbo.
G'day, Brett Robbo. Welcome to the first edition of Finding the Frothers podcast, mate. And it is an absolute pleasure to have you on here.
Benny, I am so freaking grateful to be your first frother on this podcast. And here we are sitting in the hallway of a hotel room. So we might have some cleaners wandering past, and maybe they can join in and share their froth states too. Definitely,
especially if they're frothers. Anyone can be a frother. That's such an important point about this journey to find all the frothers that we are on. And you are an absolute frother. I am so inspired by your podcast, Your Life of Impact, and that's actually inspired me to create a podcast. And also the fact that you've brought on so many frothers from your life and outside it, and using the podcast vehicle as something that has allowed you to tap into these people and really extract some of their energy and the best parts of how they go about living their life. So I wanted to ask you first up, which is really important to me as well, and I think to everyone, is about your routine that you go about during your day and really hacking into getting the best out of your performance. So what is the one thing that you do in your routine that allows you to operate at peak performance or maximum froth, as it were?
There's going to be two things, all right? So if there was the one thing I know, exercise gets me into that froth state straight away. I know what it does from a chemical balance, a hormonal balance, and gets me feeling good. But what really drives me as well, that I do almost every morning at the end of my meditation, it's quite a long routine, but is I anchor into pride. So I know pride is my energetic condition or my emotional state that drives me and fuels me to feel freaking awesome. And so I anchor into pride with a physical anchor that gives me that emotional state. And with that, I'm also repeating affirmations at the same time. And I can do that a few times, and I anchor into pride, and I'm buzzing, I'm ready to go. And then in my routine, that then goes straight into to some exercise on the spot.
Awesome. And so could you give us a quick example of some of the affirmations that you might use?
Yeah, for sure. So some of them are aligned with my big visions of, so I am an internationally renowned podcaster impacting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And so deep down, I know what impact means to me. It's not download numbers, it's the feedback that I get from people that are changing their lives. So that's one of them. I am proudly enhancing and optimizing my grandparents' legacy. So that's another one. And that pride and that anchoring of that I am with that physical movement, it fuels me.
That's brilliant.
It froths me.
Yeah, it froths you up. Yeah, our family is such an important motivator for people, and I find that coming up time and time again. And when we, it's a brilliant segue. Thanks, Robbo. But when I talk about finding the frothers and the different types of frothers that we have in our lives, we we have actually, to use the word anchor in a different sense, we identify the people in our lives who we can have access to whenever we want, which is amazing, which could be a family member, it could be a close friend, or it could be a colleague. It could be anyone really, but just someone who you can call and you know they can be there to light the froth. So I'd like to ask you about who is an anchor frother in your life that you'd like to give a shout out to, and why are they an anchor frother?
I've got plenty in my life. I'm super grateful to be surrounded by, not necessarily my physical life all the time, but I've got a lot of mates that I can jump on that are good frothers. My gorgeous fiance Marie is definitely one of those, because she allows me to dance like nobody's watching and sing like nobody can hear and just be a pelican, and because I just love being that childish aspect as well, and she so she's definitely one. And then I've got a really good mate who's been there in some pretty tough times as well. But he's doing really well in business. Peter Finn, I've had him on the podcast too, and he's doing great in the world. But I can pick up the phone and know that I can have amazing conversations with him, and then we can switch into that pelican froth state as well, and we can just lift each other up. But he's honestly, he's like the backbone of my mateship, and so he's definitely one I can call on.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Marie when you guys came to stay with us as well, and she's definitely a frother. And I think that's so important in relationships, is which we've discussed before, is all about finding people that allow you to grow. And Marie's certainly, like, you guys are awesome. So I'm going to talk about musical froth. So I have a playlist, and it's called Finding the Frothers. Go figure. And when there's no one around and I don't have anyone I can access, and usually I'll use a podcast if I need it, but sometimes I just want some music. So I'm always intrigued to find out from people what music really fires them up. So is there any particular bands or artists or songs in particular?
There's actually one that I discovered about a year or so ago, and it's have you seen the documentary Sugar Man?
No, I haven't.
Musician. Really, really interesting. And so the song Sugar Man, but then there's Yolanda Be Cool is the group, and they've done a version of it, so it's got some pretty funky beat. Yeah. And that's one where I put it on. And I actually started recording my podcast the other day, where I was setting up my mics and everything. I had that playing, and you know when you have really loud music in you, and it's like a party in your head. And so I was frothing and just dancing around and going crazy. And then I pressed record straight after that for an intro. And I was just in such a good state, and I'm just happy and laughing. And I actually just shared it with my community on the intro and just said, look, I wasn't planning on starting the podcast like this, but I've just been listening to one of my favourite songs, and it's got me in the zone, and I love it.
That's beautiful. And that happens a lot, doesn't it, when you share stuff with your community? Because there's a great Chemical Brothers song, which may be talking about illegal drugs, but the line is, you should feel what I feel, you should taste what I taste. And that's kind of that vibe you get when you're listening to music, and you're like, I really just want people to hear this song and feel what I feel, and like really get the buzz. Actually, considering you have coached really high performance athletes, and you're a professional athlete yourself in your younger years, were there any songs that popped up that you found were actually a bit odd that people may have listened to in their time?
There is. I'm just trying to think of... I love it. I'm going to have a look just quickly on my list, because... So one of the boys that I was coaching, I can't believe I can't remember the name of it, because I do love it. Right, my playlist here, and it's called Training Camps, because Cosby Sweater, Hilltop Hoods.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So one of the boys, if I put that on, it would just trigger him, and he would just dance and get right into it and groove, and that would almost be part of his warm up. So Cosby Sweater was one, and that was Jimmy Turner's his name, so he's a cerebral palsy athlete, world champion, world record holder, that we got him to that level. Another one is actually, hashtag That Power, like with will.i.am.
No.
Yeah, so that's one that my crew used to, it's just like a real and the power aspect of it just really fueled some froth within the athletes.
Amazing, yeah. I mean, like, think about Mighty Ducks and those movies and stuff, Cool Runnings. The music's so powerful, and it really fires you up. The second part of this, I guess, the Finding the Frothers concept beyond the anchor frothers, is people who are just outside of your sort of reach. And I know you've got your podcast, so it's a great tool, and you've got a powerful network already. So when you need to reach out to someone, I assume you're pretty good at it. But is there someone that you can identify who is maybe just outside your network who you'd really like to connect with?
I'll tell you what, there is someone who, and I will connect with him, I will have him on the podcast, that's Mick Fanning.
Yep.
Because, and I don't surf and I don't really watch surfing, it's not because he's a surfer, it's because of his story. And I work really closely with his coach, one of his coaches, his dryland coach is Naam Baldwin. But to me, Mick Fanning is a frother because his attitude and his shift and his perception on the world that's changed since almost getting attacked by a shark, by being attacked by a shark, almost being eaten by a shark. But on top of that, he's been through so many adversities and losing loved ones and divorce and things like that. And yet he can bounce back and just become quite strong and resilient from that. So when I get him on the podcast, not if, when, I will, barely speak about surfing except that little incident, but it's more around that mindset aspect. Like I froth off frothers who use a challenge as a triumph, use their adversity to their advantage, and that's what he's done. He's got a whole new lease on life and a new perspective, and he's doing a lot more work with charity and things like that. So he's definitely one. Mick Fanning. If you're listening, Mick, I'll talk to you soon on your life of impact.
Mate, what a legend. Mate, you put it out in the universe and it happens. But I actually used Mick Fanning as a case study in one of the workshops I do on your why. Right. So identifying your why, because as you know stories about his adversity and how he's overcome, and he essentially became 3 times world champion, and growing up he unfortunately lost his older brother who he looked up to. So his why was he was like doing it for both of them, and that allowed him to pretty much revolutionise the sport of surfing in terms of making it more professional, and in terms of the training and as the mindset stuff and the breathing and with Nam, and super inspirational. I love Mick's story. So when you get him on, I'll definitely be watching that one and listening. Awesome.
I'll ask him about his froth state when he comes on.
Mate, he's like surfers are some of the biggest frothers on the planet, and I guess probably the terminology comes from surfing to an extent. So now I'd like to also talk about people accessing frothers who have maybe moved on, so people who've passed away but can still have influence. Like I guess that comes up a lot with people, whether it's musicians, artists, or people just who are really close to you. Who is someone who's passed away who you still get inspiration from?
There's 2 people, and the first one that comes to mind is my grandfather, one of the most just awesome frothing dudes in my life. Like, he taught me so much, and he was my first real athletics coach. He got me to the AIS, and we used to travel the countryside driving together, and to look beside, it wasn't just my grandfather, he was my idol, he was my mentor, really humble, genuine dude. Him and my grandparents were madly in love, and so definitely my grandfather, and he resonated. I tap into that pride every day with my grandparents, so he's there frothing with me in that first priming state that I do every day. The second one that comes to mind is Heath Ledger, because when you look at a lot of the stories around why Heath Ledger got into the state that he did when he committed suicide, he was such a committed actor that he got so far into his character that he couldn't come out of it. And the more I look into that, and Jim Carrey's got a really interesting documentary, and he talks about far out. It's funny when he gets right into character, and that made me really realise, wow, that's a commitment. Can you imagine that for your job you have to be someone else, not just act like them? You have to be them. Change your mannerisms, your perception. If they were a jerk, you've got to be a jerk. If they were deep dark, like what Heath Ledger's role was, you've got to go into that state. So I feel like, not in that state, I wouldn't want to froth with him in that state, but I feel like, and he's a freaking awesome actor, like Two Hands, one of the good old Aussie classic movies. I used to love that movie. It was one of his first. So I think I'd have a frothing time with Heath Ledger. I reckon his perception of the world and his mind would be quite intriguing, and you just get into a great froth state with him.
Most definitely. Is there anything that, like you mentioned Two Hands, is there any way that you can kind of channel his froth based on the things that he's done? Or is it kind of more just a reflective state that you have when you're thinking about his life's work?
Definitely the reflective state, because if I watch Two Hands, I get a lot of memories about being a teenager, like at that age. So and it's more just that enjoyment aspect. But now my understanding of human behaviour and the way the mind works, and really respecting the human behavioural elements, that reflection aspect and just the way I unpacked it then, that's the way I tap into it. And you think, oh, you know what? If I've got to go and interview someone for the podcast, then I need to not be different, but just be more present and shift into a different energetic condition that fuels that environment. Far out. If someone like Heath Ledger can go into those deep dark states and a Jim Carrey can completely change his persona, then, you know, we're chameleons. We can do what we've got to do.
Amazing. I love that. Chameleons. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So the final step of in the finding the frothers, I guess, gamut of range, is the hero frother. So we talk about those people that, like, you've spoken about a few of your heroes as it were, but someone who within most people's grasp of what they think is possible will look at someone they're never going to be able to speak to. Like, I know me and you are kind of like, we're pretty cocky and we're like, oh no, we're gonna get them. We're gonna get them on. But is there someone out there who would be the ultimate person that you could get 15 minutes with, that you would, love to get 15 minutes with?
15 minutes. So a few people come to mind, and if you asked me this a few years ago, that would have been completely different. So one that comes to mind is Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he's a guru in the space of understanding metacognition, so your thoughts, your feelings and behaviours and the connections, and they're doing brainwave monitoring and hormone testing and seeing how people change their states, and they're getting into these different brainwave states and completely transforming your life based on that. And you talk about flow state and froth state, like this is like a down regulation of a state to get into, to know how to move into the optimal state, really. So he's a guru in that space, and I would love to tap into his abundance of awesomeness around human behaviour. Another one, a typical kind of one, is like a Richard Branson. So he's got his shit together in terms of really good business person, entrepreneur, really good like guy to listen to talk, loves exercise and movement and wakeboarding, does a lot for community aspects, just seems like a really good, genuine dude. So I feel like he would resonate a lot off his energy. And then the other one is, I was just talking about Jim Carrey.
Right.
If you had 15 minutes with Jim Carrey and just let him be him, like not his twisted side of Jim Carrey, but just trying to bring out a bit of froth, I think you would be buzzing afterwards. Yeah,
I agree. That's there's some powerful ones, mate. We'll have to get some links of like how people can access those guys. So yeah, I think one question I like to have, and it's kind of like with people when they might be stuck for something, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to say if I ever meet the ultimate frother. It's like, I think one thing that everyone loves to talk about is optimism for the future. I mean, if you're not optimistic about the future, then you're probably in a deep, dark place. But what is one thing that you're really looking forward to in the future, like froth style?
Okay, there's a couple of things here. I want to be a dad one day. So I'm really looking forward to that time to be able to teach my kids how to be frothers as well in a really cool human connection kind of way. So that's definitely one. But another one is, the more I learn, so through my podcasting journey and connect with awesome legends like yourself, and like I could come off a podcast episode and interview a lot of the times, and I'm bouncing and, as you would say, frothing from just fueling other people's energy. I'm addicted to learning about human behaviour, so I'm taking a lot of avenues down that way, like talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza stuff there. So what I'm really excited about in the future is what I actually... Things are unfolding ahead and I can see it, and I'm creating these communities and people are shifting their lives through our mental strength training programs and different stuff like that. And I think, well, this is just the beginning. Where's it going? If people are emailing me and messaging me now saying your podcast has helped change my life and your program has helped improve my relationships and I've improved my relationships with my kids and my wife and things like that just gives me goosebumps and tingles. And Marie and I are often in tears, or just like tears of joy of things that people share with us. So I think, well, this is just the beginning, because what I don't know what I don't know. So what I'm really excited about is what I don't know and how I can channel that to help people be more frothers in their life.
Mate, that's a brilliant answer. You never know what's going to be thrown up at you. I know you do a lot of workshopping around the place. So you've done workshops in the mines. You've obviously worked with a lot of professional athletes. If you could condense your gifts into one frothy workshop, what would the title of the workshop be? Or what would be the concept?
Gratitude and kindness are your new best friends.
Oh, I love that.
I'm addicted to gratitude, and I know the physiological benefits. So there's a lot of research behind it. We know when we're in a state of gratitude, we can't be in a state of resentment. When we're in a state of gratitude, we can't be angry and unhappy. You can go from one to the other, but when you're in gratitude, you're choosing to fuel your helpful hormones, decrease your stress hormones, put you in more of a condition that's going to take you towards a frothing flow state. So when people can understand that, and I've got some really cool ways that I do it with call centers and people and my phone message and things like that. So and kindness has a similar sort of effect. And I've got a friend who I believe is literally alive, Kath Cashel, because of kindness. So yeah, gratitude and kindness are your new best friends.
Oh, that's a workshop that I'll definitely be keen to jump in on. Now, you're a massive frother, Robbo. How can people steal more of your froth? Hit us up with your contacts.
So jump onto yourlifeofimpact.com is the website, and all my Facebook and Instagram is linked on there. And listen to the podcast because, like you said, I do some short ones on there, but the people that I get on there, like yourself and like the people that you've connected with me, to get on there, like they share amazing abundance of value. So the best way is go down the rabbit hole of listening to podcasts and get addicted and listen to other people's. But for mine, Your Life of Impact. And reach out to me. Tell me when you listen to it. Tell me when you're frothing, and tell me how I can help you froth more.
Definitely. That's awesome. I'm actually going to cut in a bit of audio from a message you sent me based on me connecting you with a frother for your podcast. And so I'll drop that in there as well.
Benny, you're a fucking legend for many reasons, but I just finished recording a podcast with Rebecca Vexler, and fuck, what a genuinely authentic, connected human soul. I fucking loved that chat with her and everything that Soul Cups stands for and everything that she stands for. I just feel like I'm resonating at the same level and we'll be connecting more often. So, mate, I just wanted to say a massive gratitude-filled thank you to you for connecting us. That's fucking brilliant. So thanks, legend. Actually, tack så jävla mycket. That's Swedish for thank you so fucking much.
I'm going to steal something from your podcast, Robbo, which I
it's
absolutely
never stealing,
love.
it's borrowing.
Well, I'm
it's
not going to
yours.
give it
What
back. No. So you do something wonderful, which is giving out a gift to every person on your podcast. And so I would love to do the same thing. And I know one of your gifts that you give out is connecting someone with someone else, which I think is beautiful. And I think that's the whole point of what I'm doing here is connecting frothers with more frothers. So my gift to you is I'm going to connect you with a frother, someone who's going to be interviewed a bit later on this show. So I won't tell you who it is now. I'll tell you offline because I don't want to ball it up.
Okay.
But no, bugger it. I'm just going to say, let's do it. Okay.
Go for it.
So, Robbo, I'm going to give you the gift of connecting you with a huge inspiration to me starting a podcast as well, Trevor Chapman. Continually beats out Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins for the best business podcast, and he's such a frother. So I'll line it up. I'll convince him to come out to Australia and maybe get a one-on-one hang, or at least get him having a chat, and maybe on your podcast too, because he's an absolute frother.
Brilliant. And I know exactly who you're talking about. I've read about him in your blogs and searched to listen to the podcast and everything like that. And, mate, I'm super grateful for that connection. Thanks, legend.
Yeah, for sure, mate. That's awesome. That's probably one of my favourite things is connecting frothers. So, yeah, and I will, looking forward to connecting more, Robbo. Every time we hang out or even on the phone or whatever, and me listening to your podcast, it's basically the perfect example of finding the frothers for me. And looking forward to having more hangs and connecting more in the future, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, brother. And can I just say to your community of listeners that if you guys haven't had the chance to spend time with Benny and you've just frothed through the internet or been part of his Facebook group, it's well worth it. Get to a workshop and make sure you wear one of your party shirts so you can sort of froth off each other's party shirt energy.
Mate, for sure. Yeah, I have to get you a good party shirt.
I'll wear it.
Yeah, ripping. All right, mate.
All right. Thanks
Cheers.
again, legend.
Quick one, guys. To keep this show afloat, feel free to subscribe and share the love. Maybe even leave a cheeky comment review. That'd be awesome. You can find the show notes on my website at bennywallington.com. And finally, This episode was sponsored by my grandma, Joyce Reichel, who passed away last year from dementia. She was one of the original frothers and would talk to anyone on the bus, train or wherever and generously impart her energy and wisdom. So if you see an elderly person who is looking for someone to froth with, go and hang out with them. They've got the best stories. Also a huge shout out to our producer Lily Haynes for bringing this to life, and Billy Otto who created that beautiful introduction in true Billy Otto style. Also, my buddies in Australia and the UK who have been super generous in swinging me feedback. In a way, all of you guys are sponsoring me with your time. Love to the guests, past and future, and also to you guys for listening. Ciao for now. You!